You didn't fail because you weren't smart enough. You failed because you were. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why your intelligence has been quietly working against you, and why that actually makes perfect sense. Here's the thing. Your brain is running a program it never told you about. There's a psychological phenomenon called overthinking paralysis, and it doesn't live in weak minds. It lives in sharp ones. When your brain is wired to process deeply, it doesn't just see the opportunity, it sees the 47 ways it could collapse. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined one, so it treats your brilliant idea the same way it would treat a lion in the room. You freeze, not because you're broken, but because your brain is doing exactly what a very powerful, very cautious brain does. And that's where it gets interesting, because the research takes a turn nobody expects. Carol Dweck spent decades studying intelligence and achievement, and what she found was almost cruel in its irony. The smarter someone believes they are, the more likely they are to avoid challenges. Why? Because intelligence becomes an identity, a trophy, not a tool. And here's the reframe that might genuinely sting. Every time you avoid trying something hard, your brain isn't being lazy, it's protecting the only story about yourself that feels safe. Effort threatens that story, so your mind, brilliantly, quietly, talks you out of starting. But here's something most people don't talk about. The real damage wasn't done in adulthood. It was done the first time someone called you the smart one. That label felt like a gift. It was actually a cage. Because from that moment, your worth became conditional, tied to effortless success, not to growth. Somewhere along the way, not trying became a strategy, because if you never fully commit, the question of what you're truly capable of stays safely unanswered. And that ambiguity, it feels a lot better than a definitive, painful no. This shows up in places you'd never expect. You hold back your real opinion in the meeting, not because you don't have one, but because you've already predicted every possible reaction and decided it isn't worth the risk. You leave the project at 80% complete, not because you lost interest, because finishing means being judged on the outcome. You're not unmotivated, you're someone whose mind sprints so far into the future that the present moment never feels safe enough to act in. Here's the part society gets completely wrong. They call this laziness or fear or wasted potential. Psychology calls it something far more precise, a survival strategy that simply outlived its usefulness. Your intelligence was never the problem. How you were taught to use it was. Your brain isn't broken, it's overqualified for the cage it's been living in. Now, tell me in the comments, what's one thing your brain has brilliantly talked you out of lately? Next week, we're exploring why the most empathetic people are often the most emotionally exhausted. That one's gonna hit differently.